It almost feels like we're having a funeral for the Detroit Lions season on Monday morning heading into week 16 of the season.
I'm really glad you're bringing this up.
And I completely understand. So if you're living under a rock or if you're just not hip on the latest NFL news, we know the Lions got battered in that loss to the Buffalo Bills. We know they've had an injury-plagued season. They lose defensive tackle Aleem McNeil.
That's the biggest one to me.
They lose CB1. Carlton Davis broke his jaw.
Yeah, he was already playing through like a broken thumb too. Like it just wild.
Could conceivably return late in a playoff run, maybe.
Right.
And then, okay, Aleem McNeil might be the biggest one, but the most noteworthy one among NFL fans, David Montgomery goes down Monday, finished the game with a torn or a heavily strained MCL on Sunday afternoon. He's done for the year. You lose his 1,100 scrimmage yards and 12 rushing touchdowns, tied for third in the league. It has been a brutal season for the Detroit Lions. And this goes all the way back. So this is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the biggest concerns facing the very best teams in the league and whether it's enough to derail a Super Bowl campaign. I'm curious for your take on it because on Sunday night, I was very down in the dumps about the Detroit Lions and just like, man, how much more can they be expected to overcome? And here, as we're recording this, I feel defiant. Like, okay, hey, this is a team that just had a 12-game winning streak snapped. Like, this is still a really good team that's going to get some players back. Like, do we need to bury the Lions right now before Christmas?
No, that's my biggest thing is it's not going to be as easy as it's looked at times this season for the Detroit Lions, but that was always going to be the case as you get into crunch time. Everybody gets hurt along this stretch of the season, the home stretch. And they just came off a game with one of, if not the best team in the league in the Buffalo Bills, with number 17, Josh Allen at quarterback, who can create magic, pure magic out of broken plays.
And did several times.
Listen, these are two of the best teams. I would challenge, though, anybody who is down in the dumps about the Detroit Lions to really take stock from as objective a point of view as you're afforded. If you're a Lions fan, I get it. It's easy to be kind of down with this, but think about what you still have. Most importantly, offensively, this team is averaging the most points per game at 32.8 points per game. That's a full point ahead of the Buffalo Bills, who they just played. This was a very high-scoring game between the two teams, by the way. Even with David Montgomery gone, you have Jahmyr Gibbs in the backfield still, who has, Ben Johnson knows exactly how to use him, the offensive coordinator. Your offensive line, you got Taylor Decker back. That is intact. You have Amon-Ra St. Brown, you have Sam Laporta, and you have Jared Goff playing the best football of his career. That, for any other team, is fine. That's great. That is enough. And especially when you think about the fact that you're going into this stretch where the Lions have Chicago next, and then they have the Niners, and then they have the Vikings.
They wrap up with the Vikings.
The Vikings, that's going to be the toughest, especially if that means something. But the Vikings have already locked up
a playoff spot.
They have a shot at the 1 seed. It's a little bit of an outside shot on the 1 seed, but they still have a shot at the 1 seed. But these are winnable games for Detroit is what I'm getting at. And you're going to be in the playoffs regardless. You could definitely use the bye. So the 1 seed is still in play with all of this. The biggest thing to me hinges on the defense. We've seen Aaron Glenn pull off miracles this entire season, starting with when Aiden Hutchinson went down. That's what is most concerning to me, though, is I mentioned Aleem McNeil. You've had DJ Reader in and out of the lineup. That interior of the defensive line is really what has saved them. That and Brian Branch. And Kirby Joseph. I don't want to slight Kirby Joseph at all.
You make a wonderful point. It's almost like the Lions have an incredible roster. Even with all of the losses they've sustained, like Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph still hanging out on that defense. Alex Anzalone potentially returning from the broken forearm. Hopefully. I said potentially. John Kaminsky could return. They haven't had him since training camp. They could conceivably get him back for the playoffs. I think
they're not even ruling out Aiden Hutchinson at this point if they make it to the NFC Championship game.
I think I think we took it like 2 steps too far.
We sure did.
Because as you pointed out, and I don't want to minimize the loss of David Montgomery. It's a huge bummer.
It is a huge bummer.
If there was ever a team that
can
could
withstand
sustain
it.
that, it sure looks like the Detroit
You've got
Lions.
a really creative offensive play caller in Ben Johnson that I trust to figure things out. Besides, we know that he can use offensive linemen as weapons. Why not just line him up in the backfield as running backs? You've used him as a receiver this last game. He got a touchdown pass to Dan Skipper, 6'10" Dan Skipper, by the way, the thickest and tallest of excellence. Right then and there. So I don't know, just put in a guard, put in one of your backup guards at running back, see how that goes. I trust Ben Johnson to figure it out.
I am curious what Aaron Glenn's plan to generate pressure will be.
That's why I think Aleem McNeil is the biggest injury that we need to be talking about with the Lions, because I do think that the defense is can I read you off the defensive injuries? Just the defensive injuries right now.
Yeah. Yes,
guys that are out or on IR. Aiden Hutchinson, Aleem McNeil, Carlton Davis, Alex Anzalone, Derek Barnes, Broderick Martin, Khalil Dorsey, Ifeatu Melifonwu, I know I always mess that up, Enos Rakestraw, Emmanuel Mosley. Those are guys that
quite a long list.
At the very least would have been rotational players for you. Most of those guys are starters.
Yeah, it's like 6 starters and 4 or 5 like rotational guys that had a role.
Yes.
In Aaron Glenn's defense.
Yes.
It's not going to be easy. And I don't feel as good about the Lions as I did say 3 weeks ago. But the strength of this team, like you just mentioned, it's always been the offense. Since their bye week, by the way, they were one of the teams that had an early bye week.
Yeah, they did.
They had a couple iffy offensive performances in September. Since their bye week, they're averaging 36 points per game.
See, yeah.
So
they were dropping 50 on guys like every other week in the middle of the season.
I don't want to exaggerate too much. I do think running into a Josh Allen or a Philadelphia is going to be a problem probably with this roster as it is. But those matchups are NFC Championship game, Super Bowl types of matchups.
Right.
I don't want to get carried away. So it felt necessary to say this and say, Lions fans, step away from the edge. Yeah, step away from the edge. This is still one of the 4 best teams in the NFL, potentially better than that.